is a core memory from when you were a blue belt, something interesting, funny, or traumatic that has always stuck with you?
I mean, honesty is a lot that I can think about. First time I rolled with Craig Jones, he got really close to breaking my arm. That was a pretty core memory. Meeting like Renzo Gracie and John Danaher for the first time, that was pretty awesome. I also got the worst pink eye the world has to offer as a blue belt. That was pretty memorable. I mean, success-wise, like I won like 50 or 60 matches at the world's highest level as a blue belt. I remember the first year of training jiu-jitsu, I competed as much as possible, and I totaled up to like 50 or 60 matches. I mean, in addition, as a blue belt, I think I'm pretty sure I'm the first blue belt to ever make it to ADCC World Championships, let alone make it to the finals where I silver medaled. One technique that every blue belt needs to know: when I pull guard against a standing opponent, one of my favorite things I love to do, and I've been doing it since I started jiu-jitsu from white belt to blue belt all the way through, is the wrestle up. So I have an opponent in front of me, I look to wrestle up on top of them. First of all, I have to distinguish which leg is the lead leg. So my opponent gives me a staggered stance, and I understand that this is his lead leg, so this is the preferable leg of wrestling up. Once I get close enough, I can use either my inside or outside hand to reach behind the knee. One cue for me for attacking the wrestle up is if I'm close enough to touch him, I'll take advantage of it and touch him behind the knee and start pulling and wrestling up. So my opponent gives me a staggered stance, I take a hand behind the knee, I pull the knee towards me. In turn, typically my opponent starts to pull away. I start wrestling up and attacking things like single legs or acquiring their hips. But in the higher level of jiu-jitsu, a lot of guys look to sprawl. So we have to have a good reaction from the wrestle up to a sprawl. So in this technique, I'm going to be combining a wrestle up and then a reaction to do when the opponent sprawls on me. So opponent's in front of me, I reach behind the knee, start wrestling up. As I do so, he begins to sprawl on me and gets very heavy. From here, what I'll do is I'll start backing out of the sprawl by, get off me real quick. So as my opponent sprawls on me, I acquire his weight. I face 2 thumbs down, and I tuck my head in between the shoulders as I back out. What this does is makes me a smaller target. So I go from being very wide, attacking the wrestling, and as he sprawls on me, I go thumbs down, shoulders tucked, head tucked between the shoulders, and I back out. This creates a smaller target, which in turn makes it harder for my opponent to hold on to me. So as I back out, I'll be reaching for a grip behind the armpit, which allow me to drag and get behind my opponent. So my opponent's standing, I'm seated. I reach for behind the leg, start wrestling up, he sprawls on me. As he sprawls, I go thumbs down, head in between the shoulders, and start backing out. As I do so, I'll take a hand towards the armpit, and I use this armpit grip to drag and get behind my opponent, where I can start breaking him down further and attacking him in various ways. Go again. So if you're blue belt on through, use this wrestle up technique, and if your opponent sprawls on you, become a smaller target, grip the armpit, and get behind your opponent. Establish the lead leg, hand behind the knee. Pull the knee towards me. As he pulls away, I start wrestling up. As I build height, opponent reacts with a wizard. From here, I grab a grip around the hip, and I step nice and deep. I glue my ear to the chest, and I use this grip around the waist and my ear glued to the chest to set him down backwards, right down towards the mat. Once again. When it comes to competing, typically you want to hurt your opponent. When it comes to training, you don't want to hurt your training partner. So I'm going to show you guys the proper way to put your opponent down with some speed, athleticism, but ultimately safely. So when I'm wrestling up, grip the knee, start building height, attacking the single leg. As I get higher, he starts attacking this wizard. I'm able to reach the hip and glue my ear to the chest. Circle a little bit. What makes this work is me stepping nice and deep and allowing my upper body to pull my opponent down towards the mat. So I have the waist, I step behind the secondary leg. I glue my ear to the chest, and I use my leg almost as a shelf to sit him over. So as opposed to just like kind of throwing him down to the mat, stepping nice and deep, gluing my ear to the chest, and I use the grip on the hips, as well as my ear being glued to the chest, to sit him down towards the mat. So I go to the wrestler position, I reach towards the hips, lock my hands. As I step nice and deep towards the secondary leg, I'm almost in a squatted position, and I use my ear glued to the chest to sit him down over the leg, right down towards the mat. That's a preferable way of sitting him down. Sometimes it sounds loud because they smack the mat and they like to break fall. Other times they scramble out. So use this wrestler position to put your opponent down towards the mat. But the blue belt days were very interesting to me because I was so green. Like I barely knew the rules. All I knew was I had better wrestling than all these guys. I had to stay on top. Bottom was bad. You know, I only had one option when it came to grappling, and that was to wrestle and get on top of these guys. You know, nowadays I have many different ways of winning, which is great. It allows me to focus and develop game plans.
Do you have any techniques that you learned at blue belt that you still use today?
I definitely have techniques that I learned at blue belt that I still use today. How to wrestle up. I started wrestling up, you know, when I was a blue belt, and continue to progress it and use it in today's competitions. All the defensive escapes, like my armbar defenses that you guys have seen put on display, and you see J-Rod use it in his world-class competition as well. I learned a lot of defense as a blue belt because my goal was like, all right, if I can just become super difficult to control and submit, then I'll eventually be able to implement my offense. So I was really hyper focused on defensive grappling, and then eventually later on in my career I got better at being offensive. The defenses that I have now are much better now, but I started developing them as a blue belt. Foot sweeps, foot sweeping, foot swept. One of the best ways, in my opinion, to hit a foot sweep is when an opponent acquires an underhook. From here, it's all about turning my opponent's upper body against their unweighted foot. So I can really use this overhook as an anchor when sweeping my opponent. Typically, I'll step away from the foot and get a foot-to-foot connection and then start sweeping my opponent. So opponent gets an underhook, I pull him towards me, and then boom, get a foot-to-foot connection by sweeping him down towards the mat. So my secondary hand, as I step and pull, I have a foot-to-foot connection along with this overhook. I also like to push my opponent's shoulder. And what really helps land a decent foot sweep is creating an angle, twisting their shoulders so that they can be swept down towards the mat. So opponent gets an underhook, time the foot sweep. Let's take a shuffle step towards the right, get foot-to-foot connection, push the shoulder on down towards the mat, and boom, we land a nice, smooth foot sweep. So again, foot sweeping an opponent. We're both standing, I have an overhook, and as I get foot to foot, using a shovel step and pushing the shoulder, again, misaligning the shoulder from the hips, allowing them to fall down towards the mat. Foot sweep. If I had to give the blue belt Nicky Rod one piece of advice, work more leg lock rounds, specific leg lock rounds. So I really didn't do too many when I was a blue belt. So we'll do a ton of leg lock rounds. Like a week before ADCC, I was doing like a turtle round with Gordon, and I got like to the side and I reached back to turn around and face him, and he hit me with a twister. And then when I got to the ADCC finals, Conor Duarte had my back, and I had the opportunity to reach around and face him, but I was thinking, fuck, I don't want to get twisted and submitted in competition, you know what I mean? So then I didn't do it, but then with like 30 seconds left in the match, I finally reached around, I was like, whatever, I gotta get out, and sent it and ended up facing him. So if I would have done that, a little bit earlier, could have shifted the tides of that 2019 ADCC World Championship Finals. So to Nicky Rod, as a blue belt, work more leg locks, definitely. And then forget about the twister thing, right? That would have been a little bit better. If you're a blue belt, make sure you guys are subscribed to the B Team Jiu-Jitsu channel and our sub meta. If you guys want to get good, buy our instructionals, but subscribe to the B Team sub meta. We do voice breakdowns, live rolling breakdowns, voiceovers, techniques, and it's just a great way for you guys to improve fast. It's important to study the best guys. That way you guys can become the best version of yourselves.